Ken Whiting with Paddle TV with another tip, and in this video we are talking about what the right footwear is for kayaking and canoeing, because there is some footwear out there that sucks for kayaking and canoeing, and there's a lot of good choices as well. And for a lot of people that are getting into kayaking and canoeing or might already be into either of those activities, footwear is often one of the last things that people consider. There's a lot of other gear to consider. You've got the boat itself, and there's lots of choices for boats. Paddles, you've got all the paddling gear that you need. And oftentimes footwear is an afterthought, but there are few pieces of gear that can have such a profound impact on your experience. You know, if you have the right footwear, it can have a huge impact on your comfort and your safety on the water. The wrong gear, and exact opposite. So we're going to look at what footwear is best for both kayaking and canoeing, what footwear doesn't work, and when the different types of footwears are most practical. So let's dive right into it. So there's a bunch of different factors that dictate what the right footwear should be. So we're going to look at each of those factors. And we're going to start with warmth. If you're dealing with cold water or cold air even, and keeping your feet warm is a real concern, is one of the challenges, then you really need to be looking at a neoprene style shoe or boot. Now you've got this one here. This is the NRS Boundary boot. Obviously it's high cut. This one is actually waterproof. So you would have to either swim or stand in water higher than the top cuff for water to get in this thing. So this thing is warm. The neoprene is just like, it's very insulating as well. These two wet shoes aren't going to be as warm. They're going to be, because they're going to be wet, but they're like they're a wetsuit. They're neoprene. And so they're designed to insulate when they're wet. So this type of shoe is ideal for cold conditions. When the conditions are warm, well, you need a shoe that keeps your feet cool and that's going to protect them as well. That's where a water shoe, something like this is the Astro Loyak, really comes in handy, or a closed toe sandal. Now this is the Chaco Z1, I think, but I'm not sure. But this is not a closed toe sandal. Closed toe sandal has a big hunk of rubber basically on the front to protect your toes. And I would, kind of jumping ahead, I would highly recommend against a traditional sandal like this for kayaking and canoeing. I used them for many years, don't get me wrong. At the beginning of my paddling career, I was using these things, but finally I realized they kind of suck for kayaking and canoeing, and for a variety of reasons. Sand, rocks, pebbles, they just can get in from anywhere underneath and in between your toes, and it's just uncomfortable. The other big thing is when you're walking in water through current or anything like this, the front of the toe of the sandal catches water, and often it'll flip right even underneath your foot. It doesn't offer toe protection either, or even your ankle protection, side of your foot. There's not much good. These are, I like sandals, but for actually kayaking, canoeing, they're really not the greatest pieces of gear. If you're going to get sandals, get ones that have the toe protection. The only exception to that rule, it was Astral came out with this PFD sandal here, which it's still an open-toed sandal, so there are the drawbacks of having open toes. Debris, rocks, sand can get into the sandal, and the front, when you're walking through water, it does catch water, and it's not ideal, but this is called a PFD sandal because it uses these PFD thickness straps so that you can really get a good cinch down on the foot. And it's got this mesh liner on the inside underneath these straps that stop debris from getting in the sides. And for me, it's not an ideal solution, but in warm conditions, it's actually, for an open toe sandal, it's pretty nice. So went a bit beyond the warmth, but really we're talking about neoprene or not neoprene. Neoprene for cold conditions, not neoprene for warmer conditions. But now let's talk about the soles of the shoe. So when we talk about the soles of any type of footwear, the question is flexibility versus protection. And if you're doing a lot of walking, a lot of portaging, you want a sole that's going to provide some good protection. When you're sitting in a kayak or canoe, you want a sole that offers flexibility. And the reason for that, and I'll show you the difference actually, this sandal here, this sole, it really is not flexible at all. This is going to provide great protection. You're not going to feel anything underneath your feet while you're walking across rocky terrain, even though it doesn't provide great support. But a shoe like this is the Kicker water shoe. It's got incredible flexibility. So you're going to you will feel more of the uneven terrain underneath your feet here, but when you're sitting in a kayak or canoe, the shoe will bend to fit in the position you want it against the foot pegs or the sides of the boat or whoever you're sitting. It'll conform to the boat, whereas this shoe won't. It's going to be the solid platform, so what's going to need to conform is your foot and your ankle, and so your ankle ends up tweaking in order to fit inside fit the sitting position you're in the kayaking canoe when you have a stiff sole. And that's the reason that one of the reasons that hiking boots and trail shoes aren't as great for kayaking or canoeing with. That combined with the fact that hiking shoes and trail shoes and running shoes, their soles are designed to provide a really great footprint on the ground and to support your foot that way, to stop the rolling. Well, when you're in a kayak, you actually want that, or a canoe, you want that sole to be able to conform to the inside of the boat. So bottom line is flexibility in a sole is really nice for paddling, and so get a shoe that has flexibility, but the amount of protection it has on the bottom really depends on the type of walking, hiking, portaging you're going to be doing with that boot as well. All right, so the next factor that determines what's the right footwear, what's good paddling footwear, is its fit. And when I talk about fit, obviously you need a footwear that's going to fit your foot. But more important than that is, does that piece of footwear stay on your feet when you're swimming or when you're walking through water or even current, whatever kind of elements you're going to deal with? And not all footwear will stay on your feet, even if it fits well when you're just walking in dry land, but not all footwear will stay on your feet well when you're swimming or when you're walking through water. And that's where, as I mentioned before, sandals are notoriously bad. They can come off your feet while you're kicking hard in the water because they act like flippers and there's different forces put upon them. Water shoes, neoprene boots, they are definitely the best. Closed-toed sandals can work really well too. It just has to be the right fit for your foot. A last little factor to consider is drying speed of the shoe. All of these, they're going to dry at different rates. I think of drying speed, it's not the most important factor. You have to accept the fact that any sandal, shoe, boot, they're going to be nasty at times, they're not going to dry fully, and they're going to stink, and that's life. There's things you can do to limit the stink factor, and you know what, I'm going to talk about that in another video because that's a whole other topic, but there you have it. All right, now what we're going to do is I'm going to explain what footwear I've migrated to using pretty much for any type of paddling activity. But before I do, I just want to take a moment to thank this video's sponsor, Outdoor Play, and that's actually where I'm at right now. Outdoor Play is in Hood River, Oregon, and I've known Outdoor Play for many, 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 many years. In fact, they were one of the first sponsors they sponsored the title sponsor of my second instructional video back in 2001. That's how long we go back. They are really one of the leading online retailers for paddle sports. They carry All great brands, great products, a wicked selection. They ship worldwide. They do free shipping in the US for orders over $49. They have a price match guarantee, so you're going to get the best price for it. And more importantly for you, they have provided me with a code to give you so that you can get 15% off your next order. And it may not cover everything, but it covers most products that they have. I'll leave a link in the description box down below, but the code is PaddleTV15. So anyway, getting right into the footwear that I've moved to after many years of paddling. And I'll start with this sucker right here, the Boundary. This is the NRS Boundary boot. I've taken this boot on a number of big adventures, from 21-day trip down the Grand Canyon, over the wintertime in cold conditions, a 14-day canoe trip on the George River, in basically dumping into the Arctic. This is my expedition boot, my cold weather boot. This is incredible for canoeing, for kayaking, sea kayaking, rafting, any type of paddle sport where you're dealing with cold water. It's waterproof, as I mentioned before, and that's one of the great things about it. It's not a wet shoe. It's a wet shoe in the sense that if you do get water in here and it's wet, well, it's neoprene, so it's going to insulate even when it's wet, and that's important. But it is waterproof, so your feet do stay dry unless you step in water that's higher than this. If you even need more protection, you can use a more warmth rather than protection. You can use a neoprene sock inside of this, which is exactly what I did on both those big trips, those winter trips, Grand Canyon and the Arctic. This is ultimate in protection, but it's not for everything, because it can be too warm. It can be just too much for everyday use. And that's why these two shoes, this is the Kicker, the NRS Kicker, and this is the Paddle wet shoe, or is it the Freestyle boot? I can't remember which, but these are more typical booties. They don't keep your feet dry. Your feet are going to be wet, but they're going to be wet and warm unless the water's really cold. But this is my go-to for whitewater paddling, sea kayaking, when the conditions are cooler. This one's obviously going to be, what's the big difference there? Well, it's really, hey, if I don't need that extra ankle warmth or ankle protection, then I'll go with this shoe here. It's not quite as warm, but I've been using these boots for probably specific ones, not these ones. These are new. These smell much better than mine, but for about a decade. Now, water shoes. This is something that I've really gotten into over the past, I'd say, 5 years. This is the Astroloyak. This is a really great all-purpose water shoe in warmer conditions. And those, to be honest, those are the 3 types of footwear that I use for 99% of my paddling. So some final notes. One of them I already mentioned, and actually beaten to death a little bit. Open-toed sandals, for me, suck as water shoes. Okay, now running shoes. A lot of people who don't have paddling specific footwear, they'll just use running shoes. And again, that's fine. It's kind of like sandals. It's fine. And if you're not paddling that often, that's fine. But there are real drawbacks. The soles are not designed. They're designed for something very different. And so if you're paddling a long time in running shoes, in a kayak or in a canoe, it's going to end up tweaking your ankles because the soles just don't let don't conform to your sitting position. Your feet and ankles have to do the conforming. Last, but definitely not least, flip-flops. Now, flip-flops, I love flip-flops. In the summer, I wear flip-flops 90% of the time. But flip-flops suck for paddling. Do yourself a favor and leave the flip-flops in the vehicle when you go paddling. And there's a few reasons for it. The first is, there's no support. Even if your flip-flop has one, and some flip-flops sell themselves as having this great traction on wet rocks. Awesome. Your flip-flop is going to stick to the rock, but your foot isn't sticking to the flip-flop, and so your foot just slides, and you're going to twist your ankle, and you're going to break your flip-flop, and you're going to hurt your feet. And that isn't a theoretical thing. I've done that countless times to myself, and I don't seem to be learning the lesson quickly. I continue to do it, but the reality is flip-flops suck if you go for a swim. They suck for paddle sports. If you go for a swim, you're going to lose them. If you're walking in water and current, you're going to blow them out. Just don't even bother. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you agree with, what you don't agree with, what footwear you prefer. I know some people are going to be listening to me slagging sandals and being like, I love sandals when I'm paddling. And that's great. Share that with us. And not just that you do, but why, what you like about different footwear. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And please do stay tuned. We got lots more paddling tips, tricks, and adventures coming your way. Make sure you don't miss any. Subscribe to Paddle TV, and I'll see you again soon.